What is going on, y'all? Y'all like me? So this is my work outfit. Educated finest, the skull shirt, and then I got on a little cardigan. I told y'all I'm killing y'all with the cardigans, and I'm gonna kill y'all on here with the cardigans too, because I just feel like people like you live in Houston, they don't get that cold. But I mean, it had its days, and y'all gotta remember, cardigans are not bubble coats; they're cardigans. So I can wear it in 60-degree weather, 65 and lower, maybe 70, depending on if the clouds out or not. See, you have to think about it like that. So today's episode is going to be a good one. It was originally centered, it's centered around the same thing, but the title is going to be different. And as you know, the title will be out, the day this drops. But it was originally centered around, making a decision to fight against suicide ideation, which it still is. But I really want this episode to be more centered around something more, even though we're still going to talk about that, more positive. And I want you to make the choice to choose life, because Drake said it best. Everybody dies, but not everybody lives. And just because you're alive doesn't mean you're actually, doing what you're supposed to be doing, or, what you're called to do. You could just be kind of like a hollow shell. So let's get into this week's meme. It is the fight against suicide can be very difficult, but being consistent with changing your mindset, you can be free from the thoughts of suicide ideation. All right. So, meme, obviously, by me. All right. Inspiration this week comes from Suicide Awareness Month. Although, I'm gonna be transparent because in entertainment and content creator, people like to break the third wall. We see it on TV now. So I'm breaking the third wall. So fourth wall, excuse me. So this episode was actually supposed to be filmed during Suicide Awareness Month, but we couldn't get a date going. But I ain't gonna lie to you, the script was already done, and I'm like, I'm not gonna throw this away. So I'm like, okay, we finna make this happen, and it's a little later, but Drake again, better late than never. All right. So also the quote by my guest, actually, it says, I believe in a heart driven by no BS approach to holistic self-improvement. Same way. Just living the life of your dreams. Jocelyn Hernandez said, "Live your best life. Do it like it's your b day every day." Now, I kind of have to take back what I said last season. I was like, "You can't do it like it's your b day every day." But I mean, if it calls you to live the life of your dreams daily, then I'm for it. Then another one, it says, you must silence the voice that doesn't align with the word of God and words that bring negativity or constant bad news. And then my other inspiration comes from the latter half of Deuteronomy 30:19. It says, now choose life that so you and your children may live. All right. So this week, I got to give a quick rant about something. So I seen a meme that said, y'all need y'all passports. I can't take another birthday dinner. Now, is that shady? Yes. Is people minding their business? Probably not. But hear us out. So first of all, me and my homegirl, she's a podcaster, she said, I hate this stuff. Let people live the life they want to live. And I'm with that. But this is the thing, y'all. As the birthday king, okay? I've been like this since I was a little kid. I've said this on the podcast before. I'm gonna say it again. I hope my daddy see this. I remember I was 12, and one day he just kind of was like, you're getting a little too old and dramatic for this birthday stuff. And as a respectful child, I said, yes, okay, yeah, you're right. And I went upstairs and like, get out of here. It's too late. So with that, I done a lot of different stuff for my birthday, right? Everyone knows we take a trip, me and some of my friends that can travel, we take a trip. And the thing is, with the birthday dinner, if you're out of town, okay. But in your city, I just feel like it's so much more to do. And this is not coming from a place of judging. This is really coming from a place of just honestly, like, y'all, look, it's much more to do than just a birthday dinner. Now, if you want that to be a part of your lineup, I'm all for a lineup. Then do that. But just like solely the birthday dinner, like at this point, obviously, if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, you're between 25 and 34. You didn't have enough birthday dinners. Okay. Some of y'all probably didn't have them before you even realized you was at one. Okay. So what I'm saying is you need to take a trip, you get a party bus, you can go to church, you can go on and here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with going to eat. But here's all what comes in it that I'll tell you about that we too old for. No matter how old we are, everybody doesn't tip. If it's typically at a nice place, or even if you go to Chili's, after a certain amount of people, it's a gratuity. Who has time for that? Now you could like play the game and like, okay, us six gonna sit over here and them six sit over there. But who got time to be hollering across the restaurant? Like, you too old for that. Now, if it was your college graduation or high school graduation, all right. But now, no. And then it's just like, why? Like, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like if you maybe, and here's the thing with my birthday, if like the plans are a little scattered, and I'm like, okay, y'all, let's go grab something to eat. It's gonna be the people around me at the time, or people who I know can get dressed fast, because you can't sit down till everybody gets there. You know you're gonna invite somebody that moves slow. You know you're gonna invite somebody that don't eat what's on the menu. So then it's like you got to make sure you got to plan for your birthday to a place there everybody can eat, because yes, it's for you, but then why would they come? Because I would, if they don't eat this. So then you're gonna invite them knowing they don't eat that. It's just a lot. It's just a lot. And I think that we should just collectively as a unit grow up and say, let's just do something else. But still, it's out of love. All right, y'all. But as we choose in life, I gotta go ahead and introduce my guest. I've been rambling too long, and I'll be here all day, and y'all know I will be. So, my boy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It was very interesting being behind the scenes, seeing you rant. You had me giggling, laughing, and anytime I'm introduced after Drake twice, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that W.
Okay, well, listen, I know this is gonna be a good one. I just know it. I feel it in my soul. So, even though they can read for the audio people, also on YouTube, like, subscribe, rate. I told you I'm finna get real YouTubey, and yeah, if you know, you know. What's your name? Where you from? And where do you live?
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Palmieri. I am originally from Uxbridge, Massachusetts, a small town no one has heard of, so don't feel bad if you haven't. And now I live in New Hampshire.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I am a podcaster, an entrepreneur. I am a podcast coach and a speaker. So I get to podcast every day. That is what I do. We do 7 episodes a week, and that's pretty much what takes up the majority of my time.
Okay, so with your 7 episodes, we're gonna get more into it as we go along, but just right now, are they like current events? Are they just like you have a topic every day? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so our podcast is holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. So we sit down and we say, okay, what are 7 things that our audience needs to hear this week? Usually, Izzy, it comes from a place of an experience. So very much to your original point of the rant that you were having, that came from an experience and you turn that into content. We do the same thing, but it's how do we align this to add value to our audience and help them solve their problems?
Okay. And yeah, and that's the thing, I drop with my podcast, and everybody does their podcast differently, but I just think with content creating in general, like I feel like we were allowed to go through trials and tribulations, and I feel that we're supposed to make the best of that. And I feel that, sometimes it's a good experience, sometimes a bad one, sometimes it's a one that's it just happened. Yeah. And I think it's just best I don't want to just to help somebody and then get paid for it too. So like, it's just like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few words and phrases, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Let's do it.
All right, when you hear the word suicide, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Old Kev.
Oh, okay. We getting deep already, y'all. When you hear the phrase next level, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Current Kev.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't plan that. When you hear the word consistency, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Success.
When you hear the word mindset, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Abundance.
All right. So the definition, obviously, everything comes from dictionary.com. It says suicide, the action of killing oneself intentionally. Synonym that stood out to me for suicide was self-destruction. I thought that was an interesting synonym. And, education, we'd be going over synonyms the other day, actually. Next level is something or someone on or above the rest of the world, on a level above the rest of the world. Consistency, conformity in the application of something, typically that which is necessary for the sake of logic, accuracy, or fairness. And then mindset, the established set of attitudes held by someone. All right, so now let's jump straight into it. The segment, what does this have to do with mental health? All right, and in this segment for you, and of course anybody new that's been joining, I've been getting a lot of new subscribers lately, so that's good. This is a segment dedicated to people, or the time where we just talk about a topic and how it correlates with mental health. So first of all, you overcame both anxiety and depression, and I at one point suffered from both of those, and at this point I'm over it. So I've explained my story. So how did you overcome both of those?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if I would say I overcame. I think I am more in charge of than I used to be. I think that's probably I'm leading now those things more than I used to. It's interesting for me, Izzy. I didn't necessarily do anything other than work on myself. So I get asked that question very often. The thing that helped me the most with anxiety and depression was being on a mission. It
Mm,
almost went away when I started podcasting and doing what I'm doing now because the stress of my old life was gone and I was actually aligned and fulfilled in doing what I love today. So I work way more than I ever have, but I'm not nearly as anxious or depressed as I had ever been before. So it's a tough answer. I know it's kind of a cop out, but it was really doing this.
well, see, that's the thing, and I'm really just and I we talk about a lot here, and I used to want to delete my first episodes, but no,
Mm,
people need to see the beginning. They need to see how I started. They need to see the conversations I was having about working at this school and that school, and then when I finally transitioned to, oh, I'm on this set, or oh, I'm on this, I'm on that, and then they can look back and remember. I remember you talked about you was going to work the other day. You hated your job, you hated your boss, and all that stuff. So it's just interesting to see that, and how you basically fell into your passion, which a lot of my guests, they find a way to bring it up in some way, shape, or form. They fell into their passion. That's kind of
mhm.
what, got them out of that place. Part of it, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you talk about hitting rock bottom. So what was rock bottom for you, and how did you, get past it?
Yeah, it's I was in my mid 20s and I was quote unquote successful. I had a high paying job. I had a model girlfriend. I had a sports car. I had a new apartment. I had the body of my dreams because I had just done a bodybuilding show. By all outside standards, I was crushing it. But I was pretty miserable internally. And I was very depressed and I was very anxious. And I was not a supportive, constructive partner. My girlfriend left. And when she left, I decided that, well, if I go make more money, all my problems will go away and whatever, being single is not that big of a deal. So
Right.
the next year, I got a promotion at my job. I was working in the weatherization industry. All we did was we would go into buildings, oftentimes schools, and make them more energy efficient. That was my job in a nutshell. Since we worked on government and state contracts, I got paid anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour. Somebody who doesn't have a college degree, cool, I'm in on that. Let's do it. So the one downside of my job was it required a lot of travel. So just for context, the year that I made six figures, I spent 10 months on the road. Every single week, I was living in a hotel, working in a different state, a different district, all of that. When I made the $100,000, I opened my final pay stub and I remember looking at it and thinking I would feel differently. I thought, okay, well, I just made the most money I've ever made. I don't feel like any of my problems have gone away. I actually think they've been magnified because now this void inside of me, I realize money's not going to fix it. So, very weird, but almost overnight, I stopped caring about my job
Mhm.
and I started a podcast. I realized that for most of my life, I'd lived unconsciously. For that previous year, I definitely lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious was hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And in the beginning, I was just having conversations with friends, talking about life, fears, love, dreams, goals, all of that stuff. But I fell in love with podcasting and I fell out of love with my job. So I didn't want to work there anymore. I didn't want to be away. I was homesick. It wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth the work that I was putting in. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job site early. I start showing up late. And it got to the point where I would have to be in New Jersey, which was 6 hours from where I lived, 7 a.m. on Monday. I would go to bed on Sunday night at 9 p.m. I'd sleep for like 3 hours. I'd get up and I'd drive straight to the job site. And then I'd work an 8 hour day and then I'd go to the gym after. And Friday was the opposite. I got up early, I lifted, I worked 8 hours, and then I drove 6 to 8 hours home, depending on the traffic. But it just kept getting worse and worse, Izzy. And I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how. And I was miserable and I was depressed and I was anxious. So one morning I was working in New Jersey. My alarm clock went off at probably 5:50 in the morning. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. I had done this 1,000 times. But that morning, it was different. There was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one is saying, you're stuck at this job forever. I know you don't want to be here, but this is where you are. If you do leave, what will your friends think? If you do leave, what will your family think? And the loudest one was, if you do leave, do you think you're going to ride this podcast off into the sunset? Like, that's not going to happen for you, most likely. And in that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. One of the things I talk about very often, Izzy, and I'm sure you do too, is the importance of the people around you. I messaged my business partner now, he was just my mentor at the time, and I told him what I was dealing with. And I was vulnerable and I was courageous, and I talked to him about how I was feeling. And he said, Kev, you're so much more aware than you were before, but your environments are the same. You need to change your environment. So I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later and going full time into what we're doing today. And in the beginning, please don't get it wrong, I was very broke. I was not successful. I was $35,000 in credit card debt. And it was a very, very hard time when I left my job. It wasn't leaving and get to where we are today, but that's how it all started for me. And that was rock bottom. And that's what I did with it. Yeah.
Wow. So, I always got to kind of pick out some parts of the story. So you worked the job. First of all, kudos to anybody who can drive 6 to 8 hours before work or after. Cause I can't, this job I work now, coming home, I go to the gym before I go home. But if I come straight home, it's 40 minutes. I like going to the gym because like 20 so minutes, and then I can gym and then go home after that. It's like another 15 minutes. I come home from 40 minutes and be falling asleep. So I could only imagine 6 to 8 hours of you. And I mean, you blessed because you never died, obviously. You didn't get in a car wreck, So what did you just jam a bunch of Red Bulls or something?
Yeah. Seriously, I was drinking at least two of those big white monsters a day. And then I was having a coffee too before work. And honestly, that 6 hours, that was nothing. We worked in Virginia. We worked, I think, a 6-hour day, and then we drove 14 hours home after that.
And see, and I sometimes I still look at myself as a kid. I'll be like, when I get older, but all the old adults, well, I'm an adult too. Anyway, the other adults, they do the coffee and stuff, and I don't do the coffee because I've seen people trying to get off, and then they look like they own their stuff. So I'm like, well, if that's how you acting on it, then I don't need to get on in the first place. If you trying to, do you still drink coffee currently?
I do, yeah. I drink. My caffeine is the most you're supposed to have in a day, and I don't know where the science is, but it's 400 milligrams. I'm between 250 and 300, so nothing crazy.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, and then what else did I like about that story? You talked about how you just dive into podcasting full time. So when you quit your job, did you put in a 2-week notice, and did you just hey y'all, on the podcast, hey, I just quit my job today, what y'all got going? Was it like that, or was it how did you, for anybody who, because you hear these stories all the time. So let me ask my first question first, which was, I think it was, did you put in your 2 weeks?
No.
Okay. Well, power to you. And then the other question, which was, how did you just start writing the podcasting? Were you already making income from podcasting? Okay, so you just dive right in. So how did you answer that first, and I'll ask my other question. So how did you just dive right into it and then start to see revenue?
The start to see revenue was it was a 2-year vision. Yeah, so we didn't make any money for the first 2 years. Me diving in, it's interesting now, looking back, me diving in was becoming and I'm putting this in air quotes for those listeners, an entrepreneur. So I'd wake up and I'd say, all right, what do I have to get done today? I have to post on social media. We have to reach out to 5 guests so we can have podcasters on. That really is what my life became, is, okay, how do I knock down these dominoes? But in the beginning, there was no prospect for money at all. I had no idea how to make money as a podcaster. I didn't know you could. So no, in the beginning, honestly, Izzy, in the beginning, I'd work 5 hours, and then I would hang out and smoke weed in the very beginning. At just 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, I'd be like, all right, I'm done for the day. I don't think I understood what being an entrepreneur actually meant. I'd seen it on Instagram and it looked really cool. But when I got into it, I had no idea what to expect and I didn't necessarily know what to do yet.
Okay. And what was your first big deal that had you like, I'm here?
So I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Massachusetts, and we had a radio station called WAAF, and I used to listen to this morning show every morning. It was called the Hillman Morning Show, and there was somebody on there named Danielle Murr, and she was my favorite. I used to listen to her every single morning. We interviewed her, and she's like a local celebrity in our area. We interviewed her. She invited us to her house. So we brought all of our equipment to her house. We got to meet somebody. Alan looked up to her too, my business partner and co-host. And we got to meet her and hang out with her. And when we left that day, we stopped at the beach and I literally sat on the beach and cried because of like how weird that was for me to meet one of my, I don't want to say idols, but somebody I looked up to when I was a younger man. And now she works with us. She's actually a client of ours. So that's like, it's very weird how things have come full circle. That was one of the biggest things for me where I was like, nice, we made it. And spoiler alert, we didn't make it. That wasn't us making it, but it felt like it for sure.
Well, it's funny you say that because a few weeks ago I had one of my friends on and he was talking about his brand and how somebody he looked up to is kind of taking the phrase and made a clothing line with that same phrase. And like and I say when your idols become your rivals, and it's kind of the same thing on that end and your end, because a rival isn't always like an enemy, but they can be. But they also can be somebody who just gives you good competition in a good way. And I think this is the other side of that, because now she went from somebody you looked up to somebody that you work with, and it probably to some extent looks up to you now. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
And she listens to us every day now.
Right.
That's weird, right? That's very weird. And I'm very humbled by that. I mean, we've put in the work, right? That's just a good sign that the work you're putting in is really starting to pay off, and some people are seeing it. Not everybody, but some people, the right people.
Right. All right. So now let's move into according to, is suicide a mental health public health crisis? Because we hear people talk about it. It's getting more publicized. It's not as taboo in the youth, and it's not as taboo in Black and brown communities, but it's still kind of taboo, I would say, with men just in general. So it says that suicide and suicidal behavior occupy a unique space within the public health sphere, while organizations such as the CDC have studied the rise and the and the suicide rates at length. The topic is often avoided and sometimes considered to be taboo by many public health officials. It says this may be attributed to the fact that despite rates of suicide being quantifiable, the underlying motivations and often the long-standing ramifications of suicide are often less apparent. So, I did an episode. I used to suffer from suicide ideation at one point for many years back in the day. I did 2 different episodes in my second season, one in my second season about suicide, where I had a friend who suffered from it, suicide ideation, and then another friend whose close brother committed suicide. Then me personally, last year, one of my close friends committed suicide in August, and I did an episode asking that centered around, was suicide selfish? We answered that the answer is no, because how can a disorder be selfish? But most older people are like, oh, you're not thinking about everybody else and all that good stuff. But it's like, how can you really, if it's a disorder? So when you talked about suicide, and I kind of want to correlate it to others, but when you had your thoughts, what were, if you could say, narrow it down to 3 or 4 thoughts? It may have been more than that. It may have only been that. What were like the top 3 thoughts that made you just say, I want to go?
One was, there has to be more to life than this. The way I put it is, everything was just gray. There was it wasn't necessarily like super high highs and super low lows for me. It was just like kind of bland. So I felt like life was gray. I didn't feel like I had a very bright future that I was in control of. And I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I was gone, my problems would go away too. Those were probably the biggest 3.
Mm, okay. And unfortunately, that's a lot of people's problem. We think, well, if I just they can't see the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, they just think like this right now,
Yeah.
and and most people. Well, I'm not gonna say most. Well, some people they will still say, "Well, that's selfish because like you're only worried about you and yourself." But it's like when you literally cannot see the end of the tunnel and you want to, and it's somebody or two people who now on the other side, but have been on that other side at one point. It's just like this is just too much, and it's
Mm.
like I can try to hold on, but I'm not doing this. So I'm, and then in some cases, I know for me, a lot of times, especially back then, it felt like you're the reason for all this. So if you feel like you're the problem,
Mm.
it wouldn't make sense to say, well, let me just go. So then
Yeah.
that way, everybody else can, everything can flow like it needs to.
Yeah.
And I know it's a lot of people that still think that way. And that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah. There's so much that goes into it though. That's the thing is
Yeah.
like there's so much behind the scenes under the you just don't know what somebody else is dealing with. And this is the thing too. I'm blessed and I hope you are too, Izzy, where you have a supportive group of people around you. Not everybody has that. And if you don't have that, it's much harder to ask for support. So that's such an important piece. You got to find someone you feel safe to talk to. You got to. And again, easier said than done. I completely understand that.
Yeah. And I remember it was so funny because I was home. I'm from St. Louis. And I remember it was like 2016. It was like one summer. And I had some of my close friends we were all in the basement. You know, Southern people don't know nothing about basements. Like for real, they think basements are like unicorns. I remember when I first moved to Texas and I was like a basement. They said, "What is a basement?" I'm like,
Mm.
well, anyway, so we were in the basement. I remember I told some of them and they was just like, they was shocked. They didn't like if they were judging, I would have known. Wouldn't have. They were more so like, I'm
Mm.
surprised that you would feel that way because you got all this stuff and you doing all this. So I'm surprised that you had ever even thought about that. They were shocked, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of people. You sometimes you think people know, but they really don't. I think when my friend did it last August, I don't think none of us, saw that coming.
Yeah.
So it says, seen by many as a personal choice, suicide and suicidal behavior present many challenges for health researchers. The combination of ingrained religious attitudes, social mores, and wide variety of psychological I can't get it out, and drivers of suicidal behavior make the topic more difficult to study, and they actually are a bigger spread of more than a biological disease or viral infection at this point in time. It says, yeah, with the rising rates of suicide across the country, suicide being seen by many experts as preventable, public health officials have a meaningful role in the play in the study of implementation of more effective treatment options. And according to mentalhealth.gov, it says some reports, here's some warning signs of suicides. Now, like how he said one or a few, which was, it's not always high and low lows, and it's not always, super low. It's not always super high. Sometimes they be regular, like a regular, like nothing's changed. You wouldn't even know. But some signs, just some blatant ones, talking about feeling isolated, withdrawn from friends and family, experiencing extreme mood swings, talking about or posting social media about wanting to kill themselves, researching suicide methods, noticeable upticks in use of drugs, alcohol, excessive sleeping. Yeah, so those are yeah. Now, my next question to you was, what is your take on suicide being a lifelong battle? Do you feel as though, because I know watching the show, and I've heard people when they talk about mental disorders, and they'll say, well, this is a lifelong battle for me. Whereas
Mm.
me personally, it was a battle. It hasn't been a battle for me for many years, and I know it won't be again. But what is your take on that phrase that suicide is a lifelong battle?
Yeah, I think it's very contextual and very personal. For me, somebody asked me that on an interview. They said, "Do you think you'll ever think about it again?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't think so. I don't struggle with it often. It's not something that comes up anymore. So no, I can't imagine that I will." But we interviewed somebody. His name's Kevin Hines, and he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge with the intention of taking his life, and he ended up surviving. And when we interviewed him, he said, I still have days where I have to call somebody and say, hey, I'm thinking about hurting myself. So I really think that it depends on the trauma. It depends on the mindset. It depends on a lot of things. I think it's personal. For me, I don't think it'll happen again, but I do think for other people, it probably is more of a day-to-day battle. I'd say so.
Now you talk about seeing a shift. What was done to get to that point where you saw the shift in you, and not just was it the things that happened to you as far as like the podcast, and you talk about how you met with somebody you looked up to. What was it when you saw the shift in you?
I remember I was walking around the kitchen one day, and I lived with my buddy. My buddy and I moved in together because we were both chasing our dreams. It made sense to split rent that way.
Mhm.
And he was out for the day, and I was walking around the kitchen, and I was broke. I had no prospect of money. I was single as can be. I had no prospect of love, and I had no idea how to be a successful business owner. But for that day, that was the first time I really remember feeling proud of myself.
Mhm.
Like I actually was fulfilled in the life that I was creating. That was shifting for me because I realized, oh, okay, I'm actually onto something here. It's not about what I have. Again, I like nice things. I like cars and all that. But for me, it was more what you're doing is actually good for you. And it's in alignment and it's going to fulfill you. I was proud of what I was creating. And I had never felt that before because I never felt like I was creating anything that valuable. So that was the shift for me when I really understood, oh, this is something different than I thought it was.
Okay. All right. And do you think it's difficult to stay positive or hopeful in this day and age?
Oh, man. I think it can, yeah. If you're somebody who chronically compares yourself to other people, it's always going to be a challenge to stay positive because there's always going to be people who are quote unquote doing better. So I would say the opportunity for that is way higher than ever before with social media and technology. If you're with great power comes great responsibility. So while you can change your phone, you change the world from your phone, you can also change your mindset in a negative way from your phone. So it's probably harder than it's ever been. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Okay. All right. So let's move into my other segment, which is the weekly sabbatical. In this segment, as we know, we reflect and just kind of think about a lot of different stuff and kind of go from there. So now, let me ask you this. What is choosing life to you?
Choosing life to me is a deep understanding that if you stay committed to improving your life, it will look drastically different in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you owe it to yourself. We literally only get one life. And I think a lot of us forget that because we get stuck in the day-to-day minutia of going to work and punching a clock and whatever it may be. And I'm not making that wrong. I've dealt with that. I dealt with that for most of my life. But I think choosing life is saying, I'm going to do what's hard and necessary. I'm going to do what fulfills me, even if it doesn't necessarily make me happy in the moment. I'm going to do the thing that I will thank myself for eventually. That is what I think choosing life is.
Okay. So with podcasting, we know that's changed your life.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are in a position to change the lives of others or help people change their lives by being a podcast coach. So tell us about being a coach. Well, I'm sure you love it. How often do you run your courses? What are just a few? What are your freebie? What is like the freebie gems that could get somebody to say those things that he told me is what makes me will have to come join the class?
Yeah, so I don't have any classes or anything like that. I have a podcast called Podcast Growth University. It's all about growing your podcast from my, 1,500 episodes from my show and being on other shows. What we do, this is what I'll say. If you're a podcaster and you want help, just reach out to me and I'm happy to do a free 30-minute call with you. I won't sell you on anything. My goal will be to help you as much as I can in that 30 minutes. If you think working together would be aligned, awesome. If not, I'll get to learn about podcasters. I'll get to master my craft at a deeper level and I'll be able to talk to podcasters. So yeah, I'm very simple, Izzy, where I really, really want to help. I really, really do. That's my goal in a nutshell. And that's why I do so many podcasts and so many coaching calls. So yeah, I do one-on-one coaching more than classes or anything like that. So if you're interested, I'd I'd love to help.
Okay. So now, obviously, we talked about suicide. Now, I've already stated it. Do you know anyone personally that has committed suicide?
No.
Okay. 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 Um, have you ever done an episode based around suicide in any way? Okay, so tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, my second episode I ever did back in like 2017, I had a buddy who one day he called me out of the blue after school and he said, "Hey, Kev, I'm having suicidal thoughts. Would you come to the hospital with me?"
Oh,
And I
okay.
was like, "Yeah, yeah." And I didn't expect that. I had no idea. And I said, "Yeah, of course. I'd love to come to the hospital with you." So him and his mom came and picked me up. I don't think we had licenses. And I went to the hospital with him. I sat in the waiting room. We went into the check-in room and I was with him through that entire process. And we did an episode on what happened to make that kind of that idea come to him, why he didn't do it. We went deep for like an hour and a half about all of it. And it was awesome. It was a very, very deep, valuable episode that I don't think anybody was really listening back then because I was so new, but it was definitely valuable. It definitely would have helped somebody if they were listening.
Okay. Okay. Now I have a question and I have an answer myself, but I would definitely want to hear you. Do you think music, media, all of the masses, do you think they make it easy to choose life in this day and age?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think if you find the right thing that resonates with you, there's songs that I've listened to when I was super sad that it's like, oh, that changed me. Like that changed my mood. There's songs that have changed me. Like I went through this huge Big Sean phase because Big Sean is just a philosophical rapper who understands things at a deeper level. And there's like certain songs I'd listen to, like One Man Can Change the World. That song does something to me. It just
Yeah.
it's upbeat, it's high vibe, like I feel really good. So yeah, I think if you find the right positive stuff, 100%.
I'll say this. I think that in some cases, especially because we didn't talk about two different rappers now, and we both listen to rap. So I think sometimes, especially working with kids and especially middle school kids, and a lot of them, every school I work at, all of them, one of their favorite rappers, always in their top five is Young Boy. And I personally don't like Young Boy music, but I just feel like that's not me. But that's I feel like more of their generation anyway. And I think that it's a double whammy because they do help you. They do make you, especially when we're talking about rap in particular.
Mm.
It makes you want to choose life, but then I think the depression comes in because you see all of what they have and you want that. And it's like, why don't I have that? And then
Yeah.
that's when it's kind of like it makes you want to, but it's like you fall short because you can't get that. I
Yeah.
mean, you can, but you just, it's the way to go about it. And
Yeah.
that's
Well, even to your point, statistically, most people won't have what they have.
and that
I
too.
mean, and when I was younger, there was no social media. I remember listening to Nelly's like first album. If you wanted to learn about Nelly, you had to watch MTV Cribs. Like there was no social media, so it wasn't as prominent seeing the way people are living. So to your point, it's way more accessible now, which shows some things that aren't very realistic. It makes them seem like they're very normal. So yeah, that's fair.
So how do you choose life daily?
Man, I choose life daily by doing what I know I should. I mean, there's days where I don't want to do anything. I just want to lay in bed all day, but I know that's not a great use of that day unless I'm burning out and I know I need that to make sure I can actually be productive moving forward. It's making sure you're actually grateful for the extra day that you have and showing gratitude by showing up. That's really what I try to do. And again, I have my days where I don't want to do calls and I don't want to do the things I do, but if I'm grateful I did it, that's a good measure for me. Like I have another podcast after you and I meet. I actually have to record two. We have two to record tonight. And like today's a really long day. It's a 13 or 14-hour day. But I feel like I made the most of the day. And I'm
Right.
very grateful of that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. So now you have turned your podcast into a six-figure business.
Mm.
So, we got some ins and outs. We got you. You talk about just doing episodes. Was it the consistency you think got you there? Was it the caliber of guests? Because I learned with me, Season 4, when I started really incorporating guests into my show, because originally it started off as just friends, and then it turned into now interview-based podcasts to where obviously people like yourself, all walks of life, with the same goal of helping young millennials, mental health conscious millennials, make the healthiest decision possible in every part of life. And I feel like the issue was season 4, I was trying my hardest. I'm in season 6 now. I was trying my hardest to get people who I felt were like that guy or that girl, like the big names. And so season 5, I had a healthy revelation, and a lot of my best episodes are with people I literally can touch in real life and talk to on a regular basis. And so I think I more so focus on, instead of trying to get the best person, have the best topic and have the best niche. And I think the issue is because some people call me about starting a podcast, and even with mine, it wasn't until this season where I really broke it down and got that best niche possible. So what is your take on finding a niche for those, this real quick, for those, a lot of podcasters listen to me. So what is your take on for a podcast or somebody who wants to start a podcast, and we're finding a niche and how to go about that?
Yeah, I would ask yourself a very simple question. If you're already a podcaster, what problem do you solve? Who do you solve it for? And how do you solve it? If you just break that down into 3 pieces, you're already more niched because you're forced to actually get very specific. If you're not a podcaster yet and you want to be one, you have to ask yourself, what are you really, really good at? And what community can you serve better than anybody else? The vast majority of humans are never going to be Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan won because he's Joe Rogan and he's a really good conversationalist, but you have to be very specific. Here's why. Because people have to self-identify as, I am the type of person who would listen to that show. It's very hard for people to self-identify if you do not have a direction for your show. So I think that's very important. I read this in a book. I don't remember the name of the book, but he says, make a 10-word description. If you only get 10 words to describe your show, that is the way for you to really lock in on your niche.
Okay. All right. So we talked a lot about choosing life, doing a thing, choosing a dream that you want, your purpose, all that good stuff, following your dreams. We didn't verbally say it, but it's kind of you get the gist. And so I just want to talk about, what is suicide ideation for those that may not necessarily know. And this is by Marcia Peirce. It says, this is psychotherapy or talk therapy during which you work with the therapist to explore why you're feeling suicidal or how to cope. And these are treatments for suicide ideation. So we know what it is, but now breaking down to how to get treatment for it. Family therapy and education. Involving loved ones in a treatment can help better understand what you're going through and learn the warning signs and improve the family dynamic. Substance use disorder treatment if you are also experiencing an increase in alcohol or drug use. Lifestyle changes. This includes managing stress, improving sleep, eating, and exercise habits, building a solid support network, and making time for hobbies and interests. Now, I'm really big on that, especially at this point in my life at 28. Everybody can't go. You can't hang with everybody all the time. Some people you need to leave alone completely. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Maybe later down the line, maybe you just take off running, screaming, and never speak to them again. But that's just where I think a lot of us are in life, whether we have kids, whether we don't, whether we're married, whether we're not. This is a weird age, and I'm sure you're not familiar. Every series I do every year, every season, I do a mid-season series. And this season's mid-season series was called Quarter Life Crisis. And it was just, going over the things we go through at this weird age. Should I have kids? Should I be married? What's another one? Why am I gaining so much weight? So it varied, but a lot of the things that we go through at this age. So what would be your words of encouragement for those who struggle with suicide ideation?
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's if you're willing to stick around, your future can definitely be brighter. And honestly, I can tell you this from experience. It can be way brighter than you can even imagine. I never expected to be where I am today. I've worked really hard, really diligently, but I never expected it. It's all a surprise. I'm very grateful for it all. I feel like I'm playing with house money often because I just feel very lucky. So if you're willing to stick around and try to do the courageous thing and reach out to somebody, your future can be very, very bright. And I would say this too. There are people in your life that care about you. Just because they don't say it often, or maybe they're afraid to say it, there are people that care about you. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but they are there for sure.
All right. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is now 988. Okay. So for anybody who wants to call that number, we're going to have a put it down at the bottom somewhere so that they can see that. And then it'll obviously be in the description bio. All right. So now, before we get into the final segment, let me ask this. Where do you see Next Level in the next 5 years?
So 5 years. Well, we're going to do an episode every day for the next 5 years. That's for sure. I would say we'll be higher in the podcast ranks in 5 years. I'd like to be in the top 25 consistently. Within 5 years, we'll definitely be making millions of dollars a year. We'll be able to help. We'll have way more listens, so we'll be able to help hopefully millions of people per year. It's really the same thing that we're doing now, just better. That's one thing I've really understood at a deep level, Izzy, is the level of certainty that I get to have every day for what my future looks like. I am very, very grateful for that. It's me in the studio or another studio recording episodes to help people. That is where we're going to be. More impact, more mastery, and more profitability.
Okay, good answer. All right, y'all. So let's move into the final game and debatably the most fun game. This game, okay, game time. This game is called Choosing Life. All right. Now it was gonna read Choosing Life or Choosing Life, but it is what it is. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and you're gonna have between two choices, and you're gonna tell me which version of life would you choose. So that way you have no choice but to choose life, because I could say life or death, but I feel like it's a little morbid. One and two, I really wanted to push the choosing life thing.
I
So are you
appreciate that.
ready? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Spending a day, since you brought it up, spending a day with Big Sean or spending a day with a president that you actually like?
Oh, Big Sean. Yeah, I'm not. Politics is not for me. Yeah, Big Sean.
Same, not for me. All right. You have two podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spending a day doing Next Level podcast or spending the day doing what? And the other name of your other podcast is what?
Podcast Growth University.
Or Podcast Growth University.
Next Level University.
Okay. Spending a day sleeping in your house or spending the day sleeping in Jamaica?
My house.
Going to a birthday dinner or taking a trip for your birthday?
Birthday dinner. I literally told my wife I do not want any parties. I want to eat a cake on the couch and watch UFC. That's what I do on my birthdays.
Okay, but that's the thing, when you have that life where you can literally do anything when you want to, it's kind of like, well,
same for me though. That's what it'll be. UFC with a bigger cake on a bigger TV. That's what it'll be for me forever.
Okay. And the last question: leveling up now in everything you're doing, or leveling up later?
Leveling up now.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to this. Is just a question, a challenge. Now I haven't been posting these because y'all been getting on my nerves on my stories, but I'm gonna start back. I don't know if I'm gonna do it this season. I might wait, but eventually, when everything catch up, the question, the challenge for this week, moving forward, how are you going to choose life? And this can be simple, y'all. If you say something is, I'm gonna get up early in the day. I try to do that anyway, just because you are choosing life, doing it because you enjoy more of the day if you are awake longer. And but that can range. You can go real deep, you can be real shallow, just as long as you answer. and you can win a prize if y'all stop getting on my nerves. All right, so Kevin, thank you. I'm glad we got to do this. We've
Likewise.
been putting it off for a long time. I know your schedule is busy and all that, but anything you want to say to everybody as you leave?
Yeah, I would throw it to you, Izzy, and say you're doing something amazing, and your community is very lucky to have somebody like you at the helm of this ship. Somebody who has a great sense of humor, but also takes what they do very seriously. So I would just throw it at you and say congrats on what you're doing, and I'm grateful that you're doing the mission you're doing.
All right, y'all. So thank y'all. Next week is gonna be me by myself, so now I can rant the whole time. All right, PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are and make your mind up. Don't let it make you.